Hello, everybody. Your next session will be with Saurabh Mishra from Farmantra. Saurabh is founder and managing partner of Farmantra. He is passionate about valuation and corporate finance, and his expertise lies in valuing early stage life science companies. I will add him to the screen so you know who I'm talking about. Give me 1 second. There he is. Hi, Saurabh.
Hi, Naomi. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm fine. Thank you so much for joining us. It's our pleasure having you here. But once your screen is up, let me know, and then I'll leave the floor.
Sure. No, thank you very much for the invite. Thank you, Esade, Esade Healthcare Club, and most importantly, all the audience here. Because as we are talking about decisions under uncertainty, so I would like to thank especially to the audience because, before deciding whether you should attend, the talk that I'm giving or not, right? There must be an uncertainty whether you should listen to this guy or not, because he doesn't come from a big branded names as you might have seen, all these big giants, Sanofi and all that stuff, right? So, but you decided to stay back because you thought that maybe the upside is higher than higher than the downsides, right? Maybe instead of having coffee with your friends or something, it's better to listen. So, as we are going to talk about in the decisions under uncertainty. So let me quickly give you how I have structured this talk. Okay. Now I have just only 4 slides. That means 4 important points I'm going to share with you. Okay. But before that, to break the ice, I wish I could see you and have a kind of lively engagement. But unfortunately, that's not possible. So what I did was that I created a poll. Okay. So I would request all of you to have your mobile phones ready. You will of course you will have the QR code visible that you would need to use it to get the question. But I'll give you.
Sorry to interrupt, Saurabh. My excuses, Saurabh. You need to share your screen with us because we cannot see the QR code.
Yeah. I'm just trying to give the questions first, then I'm going to share it as
Sorry,
well,
my
right?
apologies.
No, don't worry. So the question is the following. Okay, imagine you randomly find out 2 people from US. Okay, and let's say I say that the combined wealth of these 2 people is 2 million. So you have to choose what are the chances that the salary split or wealth split could be 1 million, 1 million, or let's say 1.95 million for one and 50,000 for other guy, right? So it's there are no $1 million prizes. So use your gut feeling and experience, and then I'm going to talk about these things in the subsequent slides. So I assume you all have your mobile phones ready. What I'm going to do right now is to share my screen, that I'm sure you are able to see that. So here is the poll. Okay, so use your mobile phones. I'll give you 20 seconds to get the answer. I think it's enough, and then we'll see the answers. Now maybe we'll be going to share it. So your time starts now. 20 seconds. So your time is up. So Naomi, I would request you to kindly show the results if possible. Let's see what are the answers we got it. Oh, nobody has been able to submit any votes. Not yet. Let's wait for maybe 5 seconds more and then we can try again. Okay, can we see the results now, Naomi? No results yet. So maybe looks like I'm not sure. What's the problem? So I'll go ahead and talk about this poll or the questions in the subsequent slides. Then, yeah.
Yeah, I'll remove the slide, the poll results, Saurabh. Just continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Super. So we are talking about decisions under uncertainty, right? So let me give a quick introduction. I run a boutique corporate finance firm, and instead of talking a lot about what we do, I think the subsequent slides will give you a sense what we are actually trying to do. Okay. So we offer CFO services to young biotech, medtech, and life sciences companies. Okay, and as a CFO, we argue that we offer rather strategic CFO rather than a accounting based services. Okay, so in order to make a decision, we have to think probabilistically. That's what we think. So what I mean by probabilistic thinking. Now let me give you a very simple example. Okay, now, before I had a chance to talk with Naomi a couple of days ago, and when she said that I have to give a talk on 20 minutes talk on this topic, I never thought that this event would be a kind of 0 or 1. I'm into success or failure. Now, during this 20 minutes of this presentation, right, many things could happen. Let's say there is a 5 to 7% chance that my young daughter, 4 years old, she can come and interrupt our session, asking me whom I'm talking to, what's my friend's name, and so on. I live in Gracia, and in 1 out of 365 days, let's say once in a blue moon, for a couple of minutes, you have power failure. Now, if that happens right now, that means that we'll be cut off, and then there will be some time lag to reconnect, and so on. Okay. There could be some extreme events like my Mac crashing, where I'm sure the Steve Jobs in the heaven wouldn't like to hear this news. But what I'm trying to say here very simplistically is that when you look at the future, okay, it's a shape, it's a distribution, it's not 0 or 1. So when you think, probabilistically, what's happening is you're trying to build different scenarios and understand that there are many things that could happen. Nobody knows what exactly will happen, but knowing those and at least understanding those distributions will allow us to manage the risk that is going to come. Now, second point I would like to talk about in probabilistic thinking is Bayesian thoughts. Now, put simply, it simply means that if my facts change, I have to change my opinion. Okay, so think about it. Let's say a sales guy from the pharmaceutical company last year might have done some sales projections for, let's say, selling a diagnostic kit or whatever, okay, for 2020. Today, do you think that will he stick to his own sales projections? The answer is no. The facts have changed right now, right? So it is very important that when the facts change, we have to change our outlook. To give you a real example, in one of the projects that we are working, when and this, in this particular project, the project had a successful proof of concept trials, right? Human clinical trials. So when we value an asset, initially we took empirical probabilities. You have to take it from several literature that okay, what's the probability that okay for cardiovascular the phase 1 is successful, what's the probability of crossing phase 2, and so on, right? But those were empirical probabilities. But now we are getting a real data. So using the data, I can understand whether my future outlook should change or not. Let's say if the data is not that great, then of course the future outlook also should reduce rather than increase, right? So this is what we are talking about, the probabilistic thinking. Second important point right now, what I want to make here is, let's say based on your experience, you understand that okay, future is a shape, a distribution, right? But the important point here is that despite knowing the probabilities, the probabilities may not matter. What matters is actually the consequence of the probability. Let me give you an example. Let's say I tell you that the stock price of, let's say, the pharmaceutical company Almiral, okay? I tell you that there is a 70% chance that it is going to go up. But then you see that I have actually sorted the stock rather than buying it. So what is the explanation? The explanation is that if I tell you that there is a 70% chance that the stock price goes from 30 to 30 to 31, but there is a 30% chance that it is going to go down from 30 to 4, that means my expected value is negative. So what you're actually trying to do is that you are trying to make decisions on expected value. So going back to thanking the audience who are staying and listening to me, you actually felt that the expected value of attending this session is positive. That's why you decided to attend this event. Let me give you another example. Let's say you roll a pair of dice. Okay. Now the probability of getting 2, or let's say 12, which is 1 out of 36, which is 2.8%, right? But there is a possibility that if you throw this pair of dice 100 times, 2 never comes. And this is what happens in the real life. Okay. So now let me tell you about this distribution that we have developed, right? Let's say, imagine we are in 2018 and all of you 200, 300, who, whatever the number is in audience, you're planning to apply for an MBA program or MSc program. And you know that particular feeling before applying. You always think that, okay, once you step in, the BCG or McKinsey will offer a red, carpet welcome, and then you'll get a salary of 200,000, 300,000, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I also had that feeling. Okay. So, but once you enter, you realize that the real fight begins right now, right? So what I did was, let's say in 2018, I did a survey of all of you, expecting that what do you think your expected salary would be for, let's say, forever your life. And I took a net present value. Okay. If you see here, I could see that, there is, in the mean, I'm having around 91 million salary. Okay. But I could also see that, there is a range. There is a 95% chance that, the net present value of all your salaries could range between 70 million to 170 million. But the problem here is that, what if, one of you maybe could have a, let's say, a new startup that could become, let's say, next Twitter or Facebook or something, and you could be a billionaire. It is very difficult, when you have this bell-shaped curve, which is a normal distribution that you might have, studied also in your MBA Statistics 101, right? The problem is that in normal distribution, when you move from the mean, the chances of the outliers or extreme events become very unlikely. Whereas in the real world, we have a lot of extreme events. Now, let me, as we are talking about these events, what happens is that when these extreme events come, it fattens the tail. So we say that it has a fat tails. So what I mean by that, let us take example of COVID. Okay. Now, 2 months ago, before, when we had good old days, right? You remember we used to hang out in restaurants and so on. I went for a dinner along with 3 of my friends. I said, and we were having a discussion about COVID. And I said that, the growth is exponential. So there would be huge impact. But everybody insisted there that, what, the media is giving a lot of hype, about this. There are a lot of people dying from flu. In fact, recently I also read one viral news about a doctor who mentioned that there are a lot of people dying in swimming pool in US than from this, so we shouldn't worry that much about it. The problem is that we cannot compare these two, which has a completely different properties. So COVID has fat tails. That means it has a extreme impact on that. So let me give you a simple example to illustrate what does fat tails mean. Imagine, I collect the wealth of all the people living in Barcelona, and I draw a distribution. So I'll get a normal distribution like this. But then I bring Bill Gates into the picture. You'll find that Bill Gates capture 99% of that, right? So that's a fat tail. So it is very difficult to have that in the in the normal distribution. Why it is important, why we are talking about all these graphs and all that, because this allows you to make good decisions. Imagine you are the policy maker, for example, in Europe, in one of the countries of Europe, and you had an understanding about what is the impact of COVID, for example, right? So then you would have made a better decisions than the decisions already being made, right? So we talked about probabilistic thinking. When then we are talking about probabilities, only probabilities don't matter, the consequence of the probability matters, right? Now we are going to the third point, very important. Whenever you make a decision, you always have a certain risk attached to it. Let's say you decided to choose your MBA program, MSc program in XYZ school, right? So it also, every school or everything has a certain upside and downside, right? So you made a decision assuming that your upside should be higher. So that's a risk asymmetry. Let's talk about COVID. In January, imagine the policymaker must have, let's say they had stopped all the flights to and fro from China, for example. Okay. Now, I'm sure the airline industry would have vehemently opposed that particular decision, but the loss that they could have made at that point of time, right, would have been much less than what it's happening right now. So that's, we talk about risk asymmetry. So when you make a decision, when you see a risk, right, you have to understand that the upside always should have higher than the downside, right? So you buy insurance, for example, before your house is on fire, right? You don't buy insurance when the house is already on fire, because if you do, then the cost is very high, as it's happening right now, right? So talking about the risk asymmetry, right, another practical example I would like to give is, in 1 month ago or 2 months ago, World Health Organization said that wearing mask is not necessary for everyone, right? Only the doctors or those who are in front of the patients should wear. Although that proved to be wrong, So now think about it. Let's say I'm wearing mask, and that mask is only 20% effective, right? And you are also wearing mask. Okay, so the net effect will not be only the reduction in the risk is not just 20%, it will be more than 20%, because there is a non-linearity, there is an asymmetry here. So it's actually it's 1 minus p to the power n. So the more people wear mask, okay, the less risk you will have it, because it's a risk asymmetry actually here. But you will still find a lot of people not wearing masks, for example. So what I'm trying to do here is to give you these examples, practical examples, to see how you can make a good decision, right? So we are going to the last point, the psychology of making good decision, right? This is very important. After understanding that you need to think probabilistically, understanding that the only probability doesn't matter, the consequence matters, right? And then understanding that there has to be a risk asymmetry. Now you must be thinking, how can I make good decision? Before I give you answer, I should tell you, why do you think we people do not make very good decision? You know why? Because the biggest problem is our inherent biases. We all have our biases. Have you thought, have you ever thought, when you try to argue with your friends, you or your friends might have keep bringing those links that confirm your biases, right? So that that's one confirmation bias, for example, I'm talking about. And those biases come because of two things. One is our ego and blind spots. Ego tells you that I'm right, you're wrong, right? So if you have more ego, you will be a very poor listener. You won't be able to listen to others, right? And this is what happens in everywhere. You will find it in small companies, big companies. As a human being, I'm sure you might have seen the more successful you are, it is very difficult to have the ego. And if you can reduce your ego, there you are. You are the man. Then you have blind spots, thinking that, let's say, I'm giving you a helicopter view, but I'm not able to appreciate the view of one guy who is kind of looking everything microscopically. That's kind of blind spot. So if you imagine you reduce your ego and blind spot, that's the very first step for making a good decision. And the second is that you need to triangulate your views with a lot of experts. Now, let's say, for example, I'm working on a project on oncology. So what we always do is we always triangulate our views with 4 or 5 top key opinion leaders in oncology. We are not going to talk to a journalist, or we are not going to talk to, for example, an expert in cardiovascular, for example, right? So This brings to me the end of the I know it's 20 minutes, and in 20 minutes, we may not be able to cover all the points. So to summarize, in order to make decisions, you have to think probabilistically, thinking that the future, is not just one number; it is a shape. Second, you have to understand that even you understand probability and shape, it is important to understand that the consequence of the probability matters. Let's say, because unknown is always unknown, right? You will not be able to know the unknown, but you can handle that unknown, right? So for example, in 2018, we advised a lot of our clients that the US is at the top of the market cycle, right? And in 2020, there could be a huge chance of recession before presidential election or 2021. Of course, COVID, was kind of a catalyst, right? And we have recession earlier. But we advise that, why don't you raise more money so that when you go through this particular process, you won't be able to suffer, during this recessionary period. So we do not know when that recession would come, but what we could know is we can know the consequence and we can manage that particular risk. So I think this is it from my side. I think now I will ask Naomi to, if she has any questions, or if you have any questions, then I would be very happy to answer that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Saurabh. And especially thank you for linking these insights to our current situation, making them much more illustrative to us, much easier to understand as well. Um, Regarding the time, I'm looking at the time, so we have time for just one question, which is, especially since we still have a couple of students listening to us, what advice would you give to students or career changers who wish to pursue a career, especially specializing in early stage valuation?
See, first of all, um, as you have talked very specifically about early stage valuation, so you don't learn valuation just by listening, okay, or reading. You learn valuation by doing it. So first step is to do as much as possible, right? That's the first step. Second, if you want to pursue a career specializing in that, I think one of the beauty of the MBA programs is that, or even MNC program, is that you can use that opportunity to network as much as possible. Without networking and building relations, it is very difficult to pursue a career, or you want to do a career change, for example. So I think these are the two things I will definitely ask the students to do.
Fantastic. And apologies for the technical glitch that we just had, but we can always count on our audience. And I have people who saw the site, told me to refresh, which I did, didn't work, and did see the votes. So here, Caitlin says, I see the votes 14 for option 2 and 9 for option 3. I don't know if you would like, just as a wrap up, to quickly highlight this or.
Oh, yeah, sure. So the option, for example, option 1 was, option 3 was depends, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, okay. First of all, those people who have given option 3, congratulations, because you're now officially an MBA. Because I remember when I was studying an MBA, one of the professors said, if you do not know the answer, just give, depends, right? So congratulations. Now, as we were talking about, you remember the knot distribution that I talked about, the fat tails. What happens is that, when, imagine you have, I tell you that you meet you have two people, and the combined height is 12 inches, 12 feet, for example, right? So you will easily say that, the possibility is 6 feet, for example. You will never say that, the possibility is of one guy, the height of one guy being 11 feet, another 1 feet, for example, right? Because it is impossible to find a person with 11 feet. But what happens in wealth and all that, there is a huge inequality, right? So if you have the normal distribution, you will never be able to, you will be able to say that, option 2 is correct, sorry, option 1 is correct, which is 1 million and 1 million. However, if you uh, as we have in a lot of inequalities and fat tails, the correct actually answer is that in the real world, you will find that, the correct answer will be option 2, which is 1.95 million, and $550,000, for example. So this example I wanted to give to you because we talked about that distribution. So even when trying to understand the risk of your company and so on, when you have to understand the extreme events, those extreme events have fat tails, right? COVID has fat tails, for example, right? Because the chances of having extreme events become very high. So that is why, this example I shared with everyone, so that they understand what's the difference I'm talking about. So to summarize, the real world, you forget normal distribution, especially where the inequalities exist.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Saurabh. And well, let's wrap it up. Thank you, and hoping to see you soon on Esade campus.
Perfect. Super then. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I hope the making decisions under uncertainty to attend this event, my talk was useful actually. Okay. Thanks and have a good day.
Definitely.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.